Hi, and welcome to the Heart of a Perfectionist podcast. I'm your host, Tegan Thompson. I'm a book lover, a chocoholic, and an INTJ living in a world filled with extroverts. I made this podcast to share my experiences and struggles as an introverted perfectionist, and to bring the inner workings of an introvert's mind to introverts and extroverts alike. So grab a cup of tea and get comfortable. It's time to unmute. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heart of a Perfectionist podcast. So it's officially May, which is kind of crazy, I'm not gonna lie, but May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So my plan is to do like a mini series on mental health this month, where each episode throughout May I will be discussing some aspect of mental health. So just thought I would give you a little snapshot into what May might look like. And yeah, I'm really excited about it. I like talking about mental health. So this is definitely something I'm really excited to be able to talk about and share with you guys. This week I kind of wanted to just dip our toes a little bit and talk about the importance of mental health awareness and why being informed is so important. So I just kind of want to start off with some definitions of what mental health is and what mental illness is. So mental health is a person's condition with regard to their psychological and emotional well-being, right? So you can have good mental health, you can have neutral mental health, you have bad mental health, just like your physical health, right? And mental illness or mental disorder is a wide range of conditions that affect mood, thinking, and behavior. So these alter your mental health, often in a negative way, and produce these side effects. So I just want to kind of break one really big misconception about mental health that I know a lot of people have, because it's kind of just a stereotype that society has about mental health. It's getting a lot better, which is really good. Mental illness is often viewed as kind of something that is like fake or imagined or attention seeking, right? It's not like a real illness. It's just like something there that, well, it's all in your head kind of thing, like it's not actually there, but if you want to believe it is, go ahead, just whatever, I don't believe you kind of thing. And that's not true. Mental illness is like any illness where a disease impacts an organ, right? So you can have liver disease and your liver is like impacted significantly, it starts to shut down, it affects your whole body, right? You can have heart disease, right? You can have kidney disease. You have all these different diseases that start in one place, right? That's the source of the disease, the source of the symptoms and everything. But that ultimately can affect your entire body if you don't treat it. And so that's what mental illness is. Mental illness is a disease of the brain, essentially. So I think that's just so important to keep in mind. That is not just like, oh, it's in your head. No, it's a literal disease of your brain that, if they took brain scans of a healthy person and brain scans of a depressed person, you're going to see significant differences. It's very real and it's not imagined. So something I kind of wanted to just start with before I jump in and talk about why mental health awareness is so important. And one of these reasons is because more people are impacted by mental illness than you think. So anxiety disorders and mood disorders are the number 2 mental illnesses that affect people in the US, and I think people throughout the world, to be honest. But anxiety disorders which encompass PTSD, OCD, panic disorders, generalized anxiety disorders, etc. So kind of getting the idea, it's not just like one type of thing. There's a lot of different disorders that actually fit under anxiety disorders. But anxiety disorders affect more than 18% of adults every year. That's a large chunk. That's nearly a fifth of people, right? So basically 1 in 5 people you meet are going to be affected by some type of anxiety disorder. And mood disorders, which include depression and bipolar depression, affect nearly 10% of adults every year, right? So that's 1 in 10 people that you see basically are going to be affected by some type of mood disorder, which is a lot more than you probably imagined. It's a lot of people, and I think people forget that. Society forgets that. A lot of people are affected by mental illnesses, and again, those are just 2 of the categories. There are a lot of different types of mental illnesses that people are affected by, and so there's going to be a lot of people who have some type of mental illness or mental disorder. But the truth is that everyone is affected by mental illness, because either you may be suffering from a mental disorder or someone close to you is. No one really gets to live a life free from it. I think everyone kind of is impacted some way by it. And whether that's you directly or someone close to you or someone around you, it's still very impactful watching the people you love suffer from things like this. Another reason why mental health awareness is so important is because teenagers are at higher risk of getting some type of mental illness. In fact, 46% of teenagers are affected by mental illnesses, which is crazy. That's nearly 50%. That is way too high, and they're young. They're the future of the world, basically, and they're suffering, they're in pain, and they need help, but I feel like there's a lot of stigma around it, and they don't feel like they should get that help, or they need that help, or that it's okay to get that help. So we need that awareness among the youth so that they can be aware and know that it's okay to get that help that they need, but also to know how to be proactive and take preventative steps so that maybe they don't suffer from a mental illness because of one thing that happens to them or something, or being proactive, being able to have open conversations about that so that it doesn't become greater than it really needs to be, right? And then also having that awareness among adults so that they can teach and guide and assist all these vulnerable teens, right? Teens are really vulnerable. Their emotions and their brain is still growing, and they're going to be very prone to developing mental illnesses because of that. And so when adults are educated and informed and aware of mental illness and know how to handle it, teachers and coaches, parents, family members, all that kind of stuff, like every adult basically, but especially those that interact with kids on a daily basis, it is so important to be able to see the early warning signs and be able to help guide someone to get help and stuff like that. So, obviously the youth needs to be educated and the adults, everyone needs to be educated, I think. But those are the reasons why. And so another reason why mental health awareness is so important is because we need to eliminate this stigma around mental illness. The stigma of mental illness, causes so many people suffering from mental illness to feel isolated, stereotyped, shameful, or even discriminated against. And, it goes to the point where people will have not only delays to the recovery, but also be prevented from seeking out recovery, or they might not even want to talk about it at all and get diagnosed. They want to just completely ignore the entire situation and not discuss it with anyone. They want to keep it to themselves and act like they're okay, and it just makes things worse. I mean, imagine if you broke your leg and you're like, well, you know what, my leg is fine, I'm gonna pretend like nothing happened to it, and you keep walking on it. Think about that. That sounds like, first thing, extremely painful. Second thing, it sounds like you're gonna make that worse. You're gonna need a surgery to fix your whole leg. It's so important to seek out help as soon as possible. And the stigma prevents people from doing that. So being aware and having this awareness lets people know that they're not alone in their suffering and in their struggles, and also informs other people who aren't suffering from a mental disorder of what the risk factors are and what the symptoms are, how people can seek treatment so they can help others seek treatment when they see that they need it, and then also know about prevention methods so that they can not only help other people but help themselves if they ever come to that point, to be able to try to avoid it as much as, well, not avoid, but prevent it, right? You don't want to have a mental disorder, and taking those proactive preventative steps is so important. So yeah. And the last reason why, not the last reason, but the last reason I have on my list, there's obviously tons of reasons why mental health awareness is important, but the last reason I have on my list is because treatment is necessary. Treatment is not an option, really. It's necessary if you're suffering from a mental disorder. And that's because mental illness does not just go away, right? Obviously it's going to ebb and flow. You're going to have your good and your bad times, just like everyone does, but people with mental illness often have really low lows, and they stay in those lows for a really long period of time, and so forth. And I mean, it depends on the type of mental illness you have. And I mean, like with bipolar depression, bipolar disorder, I know you go through really, really high highs and then really, really low lows. So you're going from super high all the way and crashing down, and it's just this sounds exhausting in my opinion, but yeah, I mean, so you have those natural ebbs and flows just like anybody does, but they're unhealthy for a person to live with, and these things don't just go away. You can't just be like, well, if I wait it out, it'll go away one day. That's not how it works. So those who live with mental illness and don't seek out treatment are actually more likely to develop other chronic medical conditions that don't necessarily have to be other mental health disorders, and they actually are more prone to dying earlier. So finding that treatment and finding a way to better yourself and be healthy is so important. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. You know, if you're not taking care of yourself mentally, you're not taking care of yourself. It doesn't matter how physically fit you are, you're still hurting yourself. Your organs are actually likely to be overworked and stressed and shut down earlier, and that's why people with mental illness actually end up dying earlier usually. And that's why it's important to seek that treatment, because healing yourself is the key, right? You know, it's, like I said earlier, it's just like any other illness. You heal it and you're no longer really suffering with it. I mean, you're always going to have it, but it's going to be less. It's going to be kind of just a part of you that was, and not something you deal with every day, which is important, right? And the biggest thing to know is that most, not every, but most mental illnesses are treatable, which means that there is some way to be healthy and get better when you have a mental disorder. And, you know, that's just, it's kind of crazy to me that people are like, yeah, you know, there's all these different treatments out there for mental disorders and stuff like that, but, you know, obviously you sound weak if you have one, so you shouldn't even try to seek it out. I mean, like, you're not going to sit there and say that to someone else who has, like, heart disease or AIDS or cancer or anything. Like, if there was those treatments out there, they would go and get them, and you wouldn't shame them for that. So we shouldn't be doing that to people who have a mental disorder. And I think that's just so important to keep in mind. How you talk about mental health affects the people around you. I promise it does. You know, and when you don't acknowledge mental health as something that is important to your overall health, you're not just dismissing other people, but you're dismissing a part of yourself, right? You're not taking care of a part of yourself, and it's important to do that. So, you know, I just want to kind of challenge you to be open to having conversations about mental illnesses and your mental health, and what you think about it, and how you could be more informed and more aware, and how you can help other people. And then, you know, kind of keep doing this with different people. You know, start a chain reaction. Try to get other people to talk about it, you know. Because the more we're talking about it, the more the stigma is going to go away, and the more comfortable people are going to feel about seeking out that help that they need, which is crucial and the most important thing. So, thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Heart of a Perfectionist podcast. If you liked this episode, or if you learned anything new, please go share it with a friend. And as always, have a good weekend, and I look forward to seeing you guys again next week on the Heart of a Perfectionist podcast. Wow.